Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. And today is the final day and the final show of 2021. And what a year it's been. We're going to be reviewing it today. And we want to know what you think. Why don't you let us know in the comments, the chat, the super chat especially. What were some of your highlights or lowlights? What comes to mind when you look back on this year? And let's meet our co-host. We've got, first off, a guy. He's from Greece. Jesus effing Christ. Why am I using that kind of language? I can't believe he's here on New Year's Eve. This guy, nothing could keep him away from this show. He's dressed to impress. Please welcome Nikos Sotirakopoulos.
Hi, everyone. Yes, we are 4 hours away from the change of the year in Greece, which is why I'm dressed up, but I would dress up for our audience anyway as a sign of respect and a big thank you for your support this year. And also, I'm not the only co-host who is dressed to impress today, so...
So we've also got a guy who, boy, does this guy know how to look sharp. He's not his brother's keeper, according to the sign behind him. He's a man of many books and a man of many means. He's a finance guy. Please welcome Jonathan Hoenig.
Great to be with you both. On New Year's Day and throughout the day and throughout the year. I mean, this has been... in many ways, a very memorable year. In many ways, a very unmemorable year. For me, one of the most memorable and one of the most pleasurable parts has been sharing it with you, Nikos, and you, Rucka, and even more broadly with Dylan, who was one of our villains behind the scene. I say that, objectivist villains in that sense, but even more broadly than that, our philosophy posse, all the members, the supporters, the super chatters, the what is it? The cross with the clubhousers, all the people that make the Ayn Rand Center UK, the real international movement that it is, on discussions that we've had all throughout the year. So happy to end it out on a positive note and on a philosophical note as well with you gentlemen today and this evening as well.
Absolutely. So do either of you have any kind of memories, like anything that comes to mind when you think of the year 2021? I've had a hard time even differentiating one year from another ever since, the downfall of society, as I call it.
So every year, my motto is, if on this day you're alive and healthy and everyone around you, the people you love, is alive and healthy, on a basis, it's been a good year. And I know this might sound low aspirations, but for me, it's the exact opposite. So my take is always, if the baseline is okay, I mean, if I'm healthy and nothing horrible hasn't happened, there's no reason why the next year is not going to be better than the previous year. So that's my take every time. So my wish on every occasion around New Year's is next year, as we say in Greek, apades parodes, which means everyone still present next year. And if this is taken care of, outside it might be chaos and all that stuff, but we are people of self-esteem, of confidence. So if we've got our health and those that we love are also healthy, there's no reason why every year should not be a year of thriving.
Aspare parodes.
Apades parodes.
Apades parodes. Apades parodes. All right. Well, that nothing you said had anything to do with what this past year brought us, but thank you for that very inspiring speech. There's a saying in Jonathan and mine's, heritage. It's next year in Jerusalem. I'll say though, next year, Jonathan in Jerusalem. I'll just kind of hang out in Austin for a while. But
hopefully not. I'd like to have working internet access on the New Year's. So I mean,
oh come on, are you kidding me? I mean, Israel is like the Silicon Valley of that whole hemisphere. But that's not the point. We're here to talk about the year 2021. I get, on a personal note, what comes to mind is I came to the decision and I took some Herculean action the way it felt to move from California all the way to Texas, which, in a number of ways, I never really thought I would do. I mean, to me, California always kind of seemed like the final place for me, but a number of things happened. So, all right, well, I mean, let's talk about 2021. All right. I hate to bring this up, but right at the start of 2021, right when people were saying, finally, 2020 is over, finally, things can get back to semi-normalcy. Then there was the storming of the U.S. Capitol by a bunch of crazy people. Okay. So right off the bat, 2021 started off on the most depressing note that I could almost imagine. All right, that happened. You guys are welcome to comment on that, or we can move forward from that.
Okay, no, we will comment on that. But first of all, big picture, I would say 2021 was better than 2020. And I realized that maybe there were more people who died from the pandemic and all that stuff. But this is the year of the triumph of the human mind, which was the vaccines, in terms of it became evident to everyone how quickly we can deal with the stuff. And if only the human mind is left alone. So even there were delays, there was all that stuff, but overall, big picture, I think 2021 was a year that ends with a positive note, taking into accordance how bad it could have been in 2020. Okay, the Capitol, we've discussed this a million times. It was, how to put it? It was in a way predictable in terms of when reason is out of the game and when politics about how I feel like. What we saw is as Rucka said, it was a moment of epiphany in terms of, yeah, this is like the walking embodiment of what has been the mindset in parts of the American right. And to use a title of a daily objective that we used this year, for me, the worst January 6th of the American right was not only January 6th, but even more was the turn of big parts of the counter-cultural, anti-establishment, however you want to call it, right, against the vaccines. So to put it in a bigger 2021 overview, for me, the biggest disappointment of the year was the American right. And I don't associate the American right with the Capitol, which was a particular part, a very fringe part of it. But in some ways, I think the epistemological turn towards tribalism, the turn towards groupthink, the turns towards anti-capitalism, like, oh, it's big pharma that wants to gives us 15 jobs. For me, this was the worst political development of the year in terms of disappointing me and making me re-examine some of the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, a lot we could get into there as far as the Capitol and the right and all that. But, you know, I really respect your intellectual honesty and the fact that you're true to yourself, whether that means you stand against objectivists or whether that means you stand against the right. In every case, you're walking your own path, and that's what we call integrity. So, you know,
Thanks.
Good. Looking forward to seeing, you know, how the story of your intellectual life continues. All right, so that happened January 6th. Then at some point after that, yes, the vaccine came about. That's sort of chronologically next, I guess, on the list. The vaccine, I mean, yeah, like talk about something that's been used as a political or like a culture war item. Now, like where you stand on vaccines now is like where you stand in terms of this cultural divide. So now taking your medicine is controversial. Like people have an opinion on whether you do take the vaccine, or if you don't take it for whatever reason, that's also obviously going to be a big deal in this sort of culture war. It's very startling, but also in a way it's sort of predictable, because this is kind of what people tend to do when they're tribal and when they're sort of package dealing, to use a phrase that we might be familiar with. Like, we're package dealing. So like being, let's say, pro-science, pro-vaccine, wearing a mask, like is like one side, but then also being like for liberty, let's say, not wanting lockdowns means that you're suspicious of this vaccine as well. Like those two are packaged together in the minds of many people. But, you know, here, many of us here on this channel and in probably the larger community were anti-lockdowns and pro-vaccine, just like we're pro every other past vaccine. So it's not, this vaccine is not like, it's not dictator Biden's attempt to install a secret, you know, chip in all of our bloodstreams or something like that. I mean, that's such an arbitrary claim that that these conspiracy nuts are coming up with, the way I see it.
Well, great to be with you both and talk about some of maybe the higher points of New Year's. I mean, boy, I can't think of probably a lower point of 2021 than January 6th. or any New Year's, kind of any New Year's memory at all. I'm sure we'll get into it next week. I'll just share 2 happy New Year's memories briefly. 3, actually. Number 1 happy New Year's memory was, I believe, in 1992. Rucka, I know you weren't even born back then. Nikos, you might have been briefly born. It was one of my early memories of New Year's was one of my first kisses. I think this is the first kiss where I technically, the kids used to say, I don't know, can you say Kappa feel anymore? I don't know if that's.
Uh-oh.
Is that bad?
Are you about to Me Too yourself?
Well,
I'm kidding.
Well,
Tell us what happened. It's New Year's.
Let's just say it was a good New Year's memory in high school with a woman named Jenny who was driving a Ford Escort. Who the only music available was "How Do I Know If He Really Loves Me," which is by Whitney Houston. It was the tape single stuck in her tape player at the time. That's a good New Year's memory. The other one actually involves objectivism. I believe in 2014 with Harry Binswanger at a party with a friend of mine at the time and Harry and Jean. And the song was Imagine that they were playing. And Harry was not indignant, but he was saying how he's kind of shaking his head. This is a terrible song. He's explaining why it's such a horrible communist song. My third happiest New Year's memory is this one because of all this support on our super chat from Mary Aline, who is, we don't have kings and queens, but I would consider her the queen of Ayn Rand Center UK. Mark Moses, thank you. Happy New Year to you. Allison, asking about our New Year's resolutions. Thank you, Allison, for being such a great part of the Philosophy Posse. And James Valiant, super generous. James, we should be giving you that donation because you inspire us. We learn so much from you. And also Roland, who put something in a language that, Nikos, you probably can translate. Certainly not in English, but we appreciate and thank you and celebrate with you for this year and many more. It's going to be even better than my first kiss with Whitney Houston on the radio. It'll be years of more intellectual development, maybe sexual as well, but certainly intellectual to come. How's that for a tease?
That was nice. I thought you were saying for a minute your first kiss was with Whitney Houston, and she was quite the looker in those days.
That was playing on the radio.
This is one of the most interesting episodes we've ever done, just like in terms of jumping from one topic to the next and the theme to the next. But I think that's wonderful. I mean, this to me is the spirit of New Year's Eve, which has always been my favorite holiday. I mean, I used to drink to get drunk. The past 10 New Year's Eves, I have not. But it's still my favorite holiday. There's just such a positive vibe out there. Jonathan, when I grew up in a very religious, I'm saying Jonathan because, he was raised with the same religion, but this you might be interested too, Nikos. Raised with the Jewish New Year's, which is a very, very demanding holiday. You got to stand in a synagogue for like 4 hours in the morning, 2 days in a row. That when you're, a kid, 4 hours is an eternity. And then, you're anticipating Yom Kippur, which is like a full day of fasting and prayer and all this. And it's like, all for what? For what? Just enjoy, reflect on the past year, enjoy the holiday, and make plans for the new year. That's my kind of New Year's. So I like the fact that we're in sort of party mode already here on the show.
Well, let me ask you guys. Yeah. Did you ever have one, Nikos? Whether I don't know if you'll get this reference, but kind of the When Harry Met Sally New Year's, because there is a bit of pressure to have kind of a romantic liaison, if you will, on New Year's. A kiss with someone, a party. Thank you, Marilyn. She says she had a wonderful New Year and that we are a part of what made it a good year. So we thank you, Marilyn, as well. And, I can imagine a liaison with Marilyn, maybe not necessarily, an intellectual liaison, but for you gentlemen, is there any pressure on New Year's to kind of have a When Harry Met Sally moment, if you will?
So I remember almost every romantic. So the big romantic moments, I remember them very vividly. I don't remember anything in New Year's, and here's why. So first of all, for the last 15 years since I moved abroad, every New Year's Eve I spend it with family because it's not many days that I spend in Greece. So nothing particularly important in terms of romance. I had though one very memorable New Year's Eve, which was in the army. So it was the night. The officer who was on duty was a relatively young guy. He wasn't, let's say, a career officer. He was a short career officer, which means he was way more relaxed. So the day after, the barracks looked a bit like there was, bottles of whiskey everywhere. We had a good time. It was a short break that it felt a bit like here we are back to normalcy. And when you're in the army, this is something which is important. So I was in a small town in the periphery, somewhere outside hours, 3-4 hours outside of Athens. So it's perhaps one of the most interesting as unusual New Year's Eve. Poor Rucka started reviewing the political events, and here we are remembering memorable romantic moments. So no, New Year's Eve is the one. So I have romantic stuff for Easter, for spring, but not New Year's Eve, never.
Okay, all right.
Oh well, yeah, but anyway, let the past be the past.
I've had a lot of very great New Year's Eve memories. Some of them are kind of bring to mind being, very young and like really chasing my dreams and like enjoying the moment with friends. I've stolen a smooch or two in my day. Other New Year's Eves, like New Year's Eve 2010 or 2011, the very end of 2011, going into 2012, I guess it was something like whatever it was. The first time I was not drinking, I turned off my phone at like 5 p.m. so no one would invite me anywhere. And I just got into bed early and just waited it out. And that was what I needed to do that year. But, since then I've been to parties. I've been all over the place. It's sometimes parties, sometimes the best New Year's Eve is just alone with somebody special. I mean, it's all a question of like where you're at this year, who you're close to, and I'm looking forward to tonight. I've got a few friends in town already that I'm looking forward to seeing later.
And Roland is following up quickly. Nikos, you were expected to translate this. Roland is again generous. Another €5 saying he was Greek for everyone present, which was a Greek expression he learned just today. So, when you support Iron Center UK, it's almost like you're getting a Rosetta Stone for the Greek language as well. So it's like a twofer with Nikos here on the staff, on team.
So was this the phrase I said, "Apades parodes"? Because I cannot see the super chat.
It's all Greek to me in this sense,
okay.
Literally, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, the point is benevolent message. If to our audience, I think that's the best hope. Yes, that's it. That's indeed the Dylan sent me the message. You got it right, Roland. Well done.
Very good. Anyone else wants to try that out? Hit that super chat button and let's end this year strong. All right. Yeah. Hey, look, I mean, don't, pour me. I don't care. I'm happy to talk about all types of personal stuff, but someone chose the topic of the show is this year in review.
Sure. Well,
we can talk about this year.
Let's talk about maybe whether some highlights of this year. I mean, Nikos mentioned the vaccine, and certainly something that is different this time around than last. I mean, there was certainly on the political front, it's hard to find anything that was particularly happy. At least I think you probably agree in the political sense. But big picture, was there anything else that crosses your mind, Rob?
Yeah. So can I say one more thing on the politics before we go to the good stuff? So for me, the worst development of the year was the new normal in terms of government overreach, and something that was not there last year so much, which was mostly the travel bans, and number two, the mandates. So it feels very, very weird now. I'm in Greece. In every shop they have to scan my vaccine to get in. And this is not the choice of the shop. The government forces every shop to do it. But particularly the travel mandates, for me, was the worst type of government overreach in 2021. And probably we've learned that they're useless, because even in countries like Australia or New Zealand, where they have almost North Korean border policy, we see that the new variants eventually make it there. And this authoritarianism with the new phase that we see in Australia and again, mostly New Zealand, I think this will be the worst legacy of 2021. So I'm afraid that 2021, in terms of what has left behind in terms of policies, is going to be worse than 2020. In 2020, we had the lockdowns, But at least the lockdowns, the idea was, look, we have to do something because we have something unprecedented, and we realize the gravitas of what we're doing. So that was the language of the government. In 2021, we saw more and more and more new things. We saw something that I could only call a global apartheid that lasted for months. So the left very often uses the term apartheid. And this time, where the majority of the developing world was cut from the West, they were not allowed to travel even for important things. We had famous people. I remember Jürgen Klopp, who missed funerals of beloved ones because they were not allowed to fly without a quarantine. For me, that is the worst legacy of 2021. And this is something that we need to be fit to fight, which is why I said that I'm so disappointed by what a bad year it had been for the American right, because they did not prove to stand up to the occasion. So it's not that we are criticizing the right because we've just, we get the kick out of it. It's because the occasion calls to be more serious when you engage with the challenge and the threats that we're engaging.
Yeah, I'm getting like kind of sad and upset just thinking about the people from those developing countries that want something better and are unable to get the most that life has to offer. Just like it domestically, it's the ambitious poor that are hurt the most by regulation and government meddling in economics and property. Like, I think when it comes to countries, it's the emerging ones, the developing ones that suffer the most from environmentalist measures, from travel restrictions, from trade, whatever you call it, protectionism or trade, lack of free trade between people in different countries. Yeah. It's us here who probably will suffer relatively less as a result of all this BS. But not to downplay what it is that like you've gone through, Nikos, but I mean, yeah,
still, it wasn't anything important, anything very, very big.
Yeah, you've been able to get through it. But like people in these developing countries, ambitious people that are getting a taste of capitalism and of travel and are ready to, grab what life has to offer, and their one life is going to be now spent largely in hiatus, in this sort of purgatory, hoping that finally the restrictions will be lifted, and it's very unjust.
I'll just jump in quickly. Thank you, Marilyn, for another really generous contribution. And think back to something positive. And, some of what we're doing here that's so exciting. And Duncan said that the best part of his 2021 was finding 9RAN Center UK. Thanks to all, especially James, Nikos, Lisa, Don, Harry, myself, Rucka, and Razi. Best wishes for the new year. We're thankful that you found us. And we're thankful that you're part of this whole community. And what I think is so interesting is if you all might remember, Dr. Peikoff would always kind of discuss some issues from the day, and we're all students of objectivism. But a few weeks ago, we actually talked about, Rucka, to your point, this idea of the ambitious poor of the most hurt. A few weeks ago, we talked about the song "Don't They Know It's Christmas," and it was for Africa 30 years ago. They're still suffering in Africa, and this is not being curt or unkind when saying what hasn't changed in Africa are the ideas. Look how even Ireland over this past couple of decades has turned around as more capitalist idea. Anywhere these ideas have just been tried, sampled a tiny bit. Africa, sub-Saharan Africa is still nomadic. It's still anti-individual rights. It's still non-capitalist, and that's why it's still poor. So we need to maybe airdrop some Ayn Rand, some capitalism objective, the unknown ideal into sub-Saharan Africa. That will help them a lot more than USA for Africa or, We Are the World ever did.
So, and another thing, you mentioned ideas. So perhaps historically the most surprising event of the year was the return of Taliban officially to power. And it's something that if you had told someone 10 years ago or 15 years ago that the United States are going to spend all this amount of money, which is probably more than, I don't know, the GDP of how many countries for how many years. And yet the Taliban wearing flip-flops, having AK-47s are going to be back to power victorious. It would be something that even if you watched it in a film, you would say this film is silly. Like these films where the communists, a Red Heat, what was the name of the film where Mexico becomes communist and with Cuba they attack the United States. And yet it happened. And the only prism through which you can understand it was our own prism that says that there is no such thing as, quote, realism as pragmatism, that ideas matter, that you don't make moral compromises, and that if you do, you will find the result kicking you in the butt. So
American foreign policy could not have been sold as a science fiction novel 100 years ago. I mean, it's people that part of why people come up with these conspiracy theories or all these hypotheses of like, well, who's really in charge? Like, who's really profiting from this? Because the actual truth is that, yes, some people are profiting from, they're finding ways to grab money off the plate, but this is not being driven by anything coherent. This is a hodgepodge of pragmatism and altruism and just a number. It's like the lobby system domestically. That's kind of what's happening in foreign policy. There's a lack of principles, and it's impossible for people to believe that America is really so incoherent and has such low self-esteem at this point that we just never quite had the stomach to show the Taliban who's boss.
Anne is correct. The movie was Red Dawn with Patrick Swayze.
Red Dawn. Yeah.
Very frightening. And Allison is also thanked even more so. She credits Mark Pellegrino for founding us all. And everyone is stuck with her. We're happy to have you, Allison. As we learn from you, and you're part of this great conversation. And Mark's a great example too. I mean, even look at this around this table here and around this program. We have kind of people from all walks of life, professors, different areas of education, background and expertise. And, we're all learning it and exploring it together. But, Nikos, on some level, though, couldn't this outcome have been expected from the start, given the fact that there was never any philosophical, war being transformed? Or should we just talk about something a little more positive, considering, it is the New Year's? We really want to focus on all the groggy.
We want to. It's hard. We can't throw a rock without hitting bad news.
Here's a post.
I was just going to mention, yes, Afghanistan was a total quagmire. I feel like you probably saw it coming basically from the get-go. But think about it. This was, again, the year that we started seeing people go to space, literally tourists go to space. Shatner, the guy from Good Morning America, Jeff Bezos, so this was a year, let's focus on some of the good. Let's not let the bad get us down. This was a year where we're starting to see space tourism. And you talk about fantasizing it, that has come to life. And it's not too expensive, Nikos. It's like $250,000. You probably have it in your ATM account right now. Get on the train. I mean, you're young and fit. You should go to space. I mean, we have to give some credit to something positive this year. Space tourism is a miracle on earth thanks to people like Bezos and all the rest.
We'll need a lot of super chats for me to get to space. So here's something else very positive for 2021. Sports. So sports in 2020 were politicized. They became part of the culture wars. But in my mind, sports in 2021 were the will and the commitment for life to go on. So even in the difficult days of the winter, of the first months of 2021, where the vaccines were not widespread, we had the sporting competition without fans. Then, at least in Europe, around the end of the spring, we had the Champions League final with some fans, and then we had the Euros with fans in almost every country. Initially with not full capacity, but then with full capacity. So this year, sports was this challenge we need to go back to life as it should be. And we saw the same with the NBA, and of course our boy Giannis won the title and the MVP. So sports was a good memory for me this year, again, as opposed to 2020, where they were still this year part of the culture war, but who cares? Sports was this idea that no, with tenacity, we are going to resist death and life will go on. And that was one of the good memories and one of the things that kept people's morale going in 2021, particularly if your team did well in 2021.
Yeah. Some more super chats. Did we read Megan's yet? For $5, she says, Nikos, here's your romantic NYE moment. Want to come over and fix my marble fireplace?
I will send Luigi.
Nice. All right. And then Marilyn with $5 says, Ayn Rand University is a huge positive. And I know we talked about that yesterday, but but I think it qualifies for this episode too, because this is an historical moment, and history will look back on Ayn Rand University and say, yes, they were like the Uber of colleges or something like that. This was, more than just an objectivist moment. This was a moment.
By the way, for founding aficionados, I think Luigi is the guy who's the friend of Super Mario. What's the Italian name of the guy that Howard Rourke sends to fix the fireplace? Anyone who remembers it, put it on the chat, even if it's not a super chat, because now I'll keep thinking about it all night, and I haven't got the book with me. So
I like Luigi. Let's just go with that. But yes,
okay.
but what's all this? Even if it's not a super chat talk here, what? No, I'm just kidding. All right. What comes to mind, and I know this is negative again, it's just like the 2021 was the year I kind of realized, like, this is never really going away, right? And, we were fortunate to have Dr. Amesh Adalja on here, and he pointed out, well, he didn't say that the lockdowns necessarily or measures like that necessarily need to be permanent. He's obviously opposed to it. I mean, it's obvious to anyone who listens to him, but people who don't listen to him, they hear what they want to hear. They think he's pro-lockdown, but that's not my point. My point is, the virus itself just seems like it will be here basically indefinitely. It seems evolution, sorry, evangelicals, but evolution seems to be at play, speaking very amateurly here. And then you've got the way that people are reacting to it, which is, yes, it's going to be increased lockdowns. It's going to be people wearing masks. It's just like, yeah, it's like, I understand we don't want to get people sick if we can help it. But
let me just say this whole idea of like, oh, we're always going to be with this, it's never going away. All I remember is after 9/11, this sense of people were saying life is never, they're never going to build tall buildings again. No one's ever going to travel again. And there was that big sense of this time it's different. I am not that dire about the future of the pandemic. I have great belief in all the technology that's going on and so I have no fear about this long term. If maybe it's a little more inconvenience, but I'll quickly echo what Marilyn and others said about Ayn Rand University is, think about what we're doing now. People say, oh, there's no objectivist legislators and there's no real objectivist movement. How many of us had an old book like this and we used to clip that that little tearaway thing to get more information? And, part of what we're doing at the Ayn Rand Center UK is interesting people, whether it's like Ellison, but people who are new to objectivism, just picking it up and learning about it. So, if your goal is an objectivist universe, it's not really my goal, but, we're part of it. We're part of it every day. We're making our own lives better through learning about and exploring some of these ideas. So I take it as a win because I learned about objectivism this year and my life got better because of it. So for me, that's a W.
I've learned a lot as well. Some of it happened here as a result of doing the show and talking to all you smart folks and being called upon to comment on stuff. And that got me to realize, because we've spoken about since this show was conceived, we've been talking about, is this East Germany? How do you call this? And I realized on the show, and I said, I think this is the mixed economy, basically the realities of the mixed economy reaching the average person. Like, we're all big business now. We're all financiers now, in a sense. Now we're all being treated like we're guilty, just for existing, which is how bankers are treated every day. It's how big business are treated every day. And now, tag, you're it. So we really ought to think about, is this the world we want to live in? Is this the world we want to live in?
This was perhaps the most profound take of the Daily Objective in 2021. I mean, if you think about it, this was an original moment. So that's a Daily Objective takeaway in 2021 by Rucka, who perhaps makes him the MVP of the year 2021. But
wow, I can't take that as I take that and put it in my pocket. Oh, stop. No, but a lot of positive vibes. It's unfortunate that so many negative things have been raised when there's just so many positive things. I mean, what do you guys think of Facebook's metaverse or Meta, whatever it is?
I have zero idea, so I can't comment. But what I found interesting is how so many other people who have zero idea have hot takes on metaverse. So, yeah.
I love technology. Jonathan, please.
No. I was just gonna say, I mean, I don't even know what, as they say, WTF exactly metaverse is, but I love the idea of all of these companies, all these entrepreneurs around the world falling over themselves to try to find something amazing and new for us to buy. What's that meme of, take my money, and like, isn't that great that in a free society, in a free economy, there's people always trying to come up with something new? And like, to your point, Nikos, I'm almost amazed when people have such adamant hot takes against something that is costing them nothing, that they don't have to be, it's like, oh, I hate what Facebook's doing. No. It's like, well, it's not costing you anything and you don't have to be involved with it. So I just love the fact that every year that comes around, there's some new technology to maybe try, maybe not try. And you only see that, of course, in a free capitalist entrepreneurial society, which despite all the hot takes, we still have.
Mm-hmm.
And part of this reaction is that Zuckerberg is making us all retreat to the online world and is making us all soy boys. If this is the case, then you yourself become better and you have an advantage. So don't focus on the negative stuff. Even this is decline of the West, even this is whatever, be the example that will lead the resistance, or be the but the problem is that most of the people who react to these things, they stick on the negative and they don't make themselves an example of what is the alternative. So if there is no meaningful relationships in the offline world and we have to all go online, create these meaningful relationships in your own circle. Don't or do something about it.
Tazy says, she doesn't hate Meta, but she doesn't like their sanctimonious politics. But, look what we're doing here. We're using big tech and talking about other types of politics, talking about so we're speaking out, as Ayn Rand would say, right, Rucka?
Having said that, the way that quote big tech threat. Anyway, I don't want to go back to Trump and all that stuff, but it was for me one of the very worrying trends of 2021. This idea that we've got everything figured out, we know what is good and what is bad, and in our moral compass, the leader of Iran can be on Twitter, but Trump cannot be. So that was something that was actually something that 10 years ago would sound completely inconceivable. And again, how interesting that the left that was talking about how big money is ruining democracy, they had nothing to say about that. And of course, even on that topic, the reaction of the right was so bad that takes away any merit that they might have, because their reaction was, therefore we need to use the big arm of the strong arm of the state against quote big tech, including people from our community or the periphery of our community, which makes it sad. Anyway, let's finish with something positive, though.
Yes, there's a lot we could get into all day, but we only have a little bit of time. So any plans, any resolutions and/or goals for the new year? Either of you?
So hopefully within 2-3 weeks, I will have moved back permanently to Greece. This will be the year where I'll work full time with objectivism, which was the biggest development in 2021 for me. So again, if everything goes well in terms of nothing extraordinarily bad, this is going to be a good year.
Yeah. Should I go? Jonathan, you got anything? I'll go.
No, you go ahead, Rucka, please.
All right. I hope to Rucka's Nucka's NFTs are dropping at midnight Eastern. And they say this is the way of the future. So let's see what happens. It would be really wonderful to in the future be like Gary V, yelling at the young, telling them why they'll never be successful like me because they don't have what it takes. That would be a very cool new path.
How much is an NFT is a picture of some sort? How much, if one wanted one, how much?
It'll only cost you your soul, Jonathan. One soul, SOL. And that's roughly, yeah. Anyway, but that's
we'll look it up.
We'll look it up. We'll get into but hopefully I continue to grow intellectually and spiritually. I mature and grow as a person. We spoke a lot about the whole objectivist world and about ARC on yesterday's episode, and that got me thinking. Like about a year ago, we did one of our usual annual patting ourselves on the back type episodes for New Year's, and I think back then probably like ARC was mostly amateurs. I think like James Valiant was probably like the resident, like bona fide intellectual sort of leading the way. And I mean, today we've got him, we've got Don Watkins with a, fixed in the network. We've got, Ankar Gate stopping by often and regularly. Harry Binswanger has a show. I mean, we're like at like 50-50 now, like amateurs and pros. I mean, it's really an interesting thing to see happening. So, let's see what happens in the world, the intellectual sort of movement, and hopefully it continues to grow and be a positive thing. Yes, Nikos.
So raising a glass to Razi.
Yes, raising a glass to Razi, the host that people wish they could see more of. Jonathan, did you have any?
Sure.
Goals?
I'll leave it on a positive note, which is an objectivist note. I mean, we're all here not because we're all the same in any way other than we, all across our super chat too in our world, we share an interest in Ayn Rand's ideas. And I know for me, my life started getting better the moment I learned about Ayn Rand's ideas, and my life is better the more I adhere to her ideas. So here's to all of us kind of taking this opportunity to explore more of them and not to wait. I'll just say this, when I was just getting into objectivism, Dr. Peikoff was much more active. He was, and I think I waited a little bit probably to go see him live, to go to Ocons. So don't make my mistake, don't wait to kind of avail yourself of Don, of James Valiant, of Harry Binswanger. Go to these live events that Razi is organizing in the UK and all around the world, and be part of our philosophy posse, because it's philosophy for politics, but I know you guys would agree that ultimately it's about making your life better and improving your life, improving your happiness. I know it's done that for me. So let's raise a glass to 2021, to a great new year for all of us with the channel, and to all of us individually in our own selfish pursuits.
Yes, and my favorite line that I've been repeating this year is people need to be more selfish. They're not selfish enough. That's kind of how I see a lot of the problems that plague us as a culture. People are just not selfish enough. And my wish for all of us is, may we find increased selfishness in the upcoming year. All right, I guess with that, we can call it a wrap. Thank you all. Marilyn with $2 says Pascal. I don't think we read that one, but yes. I don't know.
Pasquale. Yeah, that's the name of the guy who Howard Rourke sent to fix the fireplace. Yeah.
Wow, I'm surprised a guy with the name that cool couldn't, put on the moves on Dominique with his own swagger. But anyway, jokes aside, thank you all for watching today. Thank you all for watching this year. Thank you all for your support, members of the network, super chatters, or just people who watch, people who engage,
people who share.
Yeah, people who share. I would say we couldn't do this without you. We could do this without you, but it just, it wouldn't be as cool, would it? Thanks, Jonathan and Nikos. You guys are like my favorite internet. I mean, we're like internet friends. We should really meet up as soon as we can and just kind of breathe the same air. But yeah, nice talking to you guys on the internet here so much. All right, happy New Year. Nothing else happening today. Tomorrow is not only New Year's, but is God's day of rest. And I will ask you as the final question of 2021, what does rest even mean to an omnipotent being? What does rest mean when your entire existence is effortless, when you can bring the universe into existence without burning a calorie? What do you need a day of rest for? Can someone explain that? Leave us a comment down below. See you back here on Monday for a 2022 episode of The Daily Objective. And goodbye. I think